Welcome to commARCH Dialogues. In the January, February, and March-April 2021 issues of commARCH, we asked leading architect Robert Benson to interview key individuals about the transformations currently occurring and what we should expect in the future regarding the built environment. For a transcript of this conversation, more interviews from the project, and full digital issues of the commARCH magazine, please visit the commARCH website at www.commARCH.com. This interview's conversation is with 5iveFingaz. 5iveFingaz is an artist based out of Norwalk, Connecticut. When asked what artists influence him the most, the answers make good sense. Dali, Kahlo, Basquiat, Picasso, Warhol, Harding, adding that he is attracted to each of their eccentric personalities more than their actual art. 5iveFingaz is all about his arts, the individuals who view it, and the positive effects it can have. What is clear is 5iveFingaz' unrelenting exploration of his mind in search for simplification of truth and meaningfulness that is universal to all humans. Thank you for joining us. Let's head into the dialogue.
What technology do you expect to impact the most in the coming years? And when I say that, I mean post-pandemic, this current pandemic that we're in, whatever we're leaving, whatever, even if the virus sticks around for a decade, at some point in the next year or two, we're going to return to a new normal. And so I'm just curious about, what kind of technology you think might be most impactful, positive or negative?
I don't know. So being an artist and just quarantining, it's funny because you were left to your own devices almost, because it was almost a sudden shutdown. Like people saw it coming. I saw it coming. People thought I was nuts. Like I was stocking up on food and my girlfriend at the time, she was just like, "You all right? Like this is crazy." And this was like in January, and I'm like, "No, it's fine. Like I'm just buying extra masks." I'm like, "You never know." I was like, I was watching the news closely. So I just think through the new normal, I feel like people have gotten more tech savvy in general and having to pivot with their businesses. So I have an online store, and lucky for me, it's been doing well, has been doing well. But I think it's just reinventing yourself as far as getting to learn technology, and I feel like in the early onsets when you had Zoom calls, people were still trying to figure out how to do Zoom. And now you have people that are pros at Zoom and, Google Meetup, and like, it's just finding ways of connecting without seeing each other, and I think that's one of the biggest changes. And then out of that, I just think developing apps, finding ways of staying connected, new ways of staying connected, social media platforms, I think is big. And as far as technology, I just see it like fitness, like Peloton. I feel like, just finding new ways of staying, yeah, there you go. Like Peloton, and finding new ways of staying healthy and new regimens and health and wellness, and even creativity, like I feel like I've seen posts by people that are doing building furniture and making clothes and making trinkets and making jewelry that I never knew. I knew them professionally, but I never knew they did that on that side. They were just always either into finance or, into their careers, where now I'm starting to see a more holistic approach where they're like selling chairs that they made. And, and it's funny because you're combining the organic world of making hands-on stuff and working with your hands. Like I feel like Etsy, like Etsy came to play in real life, where you like everyone became a bowl maker, where like on my store I sell a couple tie-dye stuff that's been selling like hotcakes, but then at the same time parents at home have been making a lot of tie-dye stuff with their kids. So a lot of that stuff isn't available, or it's like in shortage because everyone all of a sudden is online learning too, like college and going back and just getting recertified in something else to change your career path into something else. And businesses having to adapt in general, because I was toying with the idea of having a brick and mortar, where people can get some of my stuff and just come do art. And that was maybe 6 months before the pandemic. And then lucky for me, you know, I was just sitting back and looking for spaces, and then I kind of took a pause, and I was like, I'm gonna give it a year. Luckily, I did, because, you know, who knows where I would be, you know. But I think it's just I think a major shift is just adapting to all the new stuff that's offered, you know, out there. And I think it's just this, like, even seeing the SNL footage, or the shows of they when they did it on Zoom, and, you know, like, that is like, it's just been a strange time where it's like dystopian, but it's not, you
Yeah, that's
know.
interesting. How do you, just a quick follow up with creativity? For me, I really thrive on going to different places, seeing different people, moving,
Yeah.
experiencing different environments. This year has been horrendous for my creativity personally because I've walked the same, 15 blocks around my place all year. I can't stand any more of it, and I'm in the house. I'm lucky to have a house, but
Yeah.
the same four walls, the monotony is really sort of getting to me. How do you handle your creativity in something like this?
Yeah, and I mean, luckily for me, like, I was like kind of a recluse, like like introvert person, so like I kind of adapted well. But I did um I was sort of like you, like, you know, when I travel a lot, like, I was traveling a lot more. Obviously, I haven't really been anywhere, you know, too far, but like, I get a lot of ideas from traveling, you know, and I feel like that helps out a lot of people as far as mentally just escaping, you know, when you get away from everyday life. So I do get a lot of ideas, even from taking a train, overhearing people speak, and you know, like, just walking through the city, New York City, or like Chicago. And I haven't been to Chicago in like 6 months, no, actually, since the pandemic started, so almost a year. And, you know, and I would just travel around the city and just, like, not eavesdrop, but just stuff that fell on my lap, like, you know, like, someone sit next to me and you hear them talking, and I always had my notepad, and I'm like, oh, that'll make like a cool phrase, and like rephrase the words, or like, that's a cool painting, take pictures. So it's a matter of I think it's and I call it you know, global versus local, like, you know, like, on a global scale, because everyone's in front of the computers more. So like, now I brought a lot of people, out of my followers, to my world, you know, whereas opposed, like, I would go out to their countries and spread love more than ever out there, and, like, you know, spread love, you know, wherever I can. But because of a global reach within social media, you could just bring your local town to them, you know. And like, I've been lucky enough where a lot of people donated walls during this time, so I can paint murals and stay away from people, you know, where I'm secluded and still painting. And I can, you know, show the pictures to the world and just be like, you know, this is my hometown, and, you know, we're doing this and doing that. Where people are like, you know, that's so cool. Like, we can't wait to, you know, get you out here to do that here. But to stay, you know, very creative, has just been scouring the web, pretty much, and scouring the web, and having Zoom calls with other artists, and, you know, still maintaining that. And it's been harder, but it's also been kind of a mental break, you know, like
Mm,
I've
mm.
taken kind of like a mental health kind of break, where, and not to say I'm not a big new year, new me, but like, I waited to that mark to start releasing a lot of new stuff, a lot of new apparel, a lot of new shirts that I've been working on. Because I feel like the first half was checking in on people that follow me and make sure that they're okay. Like, a lot of parents reach out to me and ask me if I could do Zoom calls with the kids or with their classrooms. And so I
Oh
do a lot of
wow.
Zoom calls with classrooms. And even talking with the kids in the classroom and brainstorming with some of the kids in the classrooms, that kind of, you know, seeing different perspectives always invigorates me. So just seeing like kids of all ages, and just shouting out ideas and talking to them. So back to the technology, like, you know, without Zoom, I mean, I couldn't imagine this like in the 90s, like,
You're
this
right.
happening in the 90s, you know, like, would be, I don't know how we would deal, you know. We're lucky and privileged enough to have the internet where it is, you know, as far as dated, you know, compared to the dated computers that we had back in the 90s.
Well, and it really exacerbates because not everybody does have the access to the internet, and that really
Right.
makes this way more profound. Some folks are
Yeah.
stuck in those 90s you're talking about, and
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
have to figure that out. We can't. That's not acceptable, and
Exactly.
we're, as a society, we're going to have to work through that. With
Yeah.
regard to social behaviors, something as simple as the handshake that typically, goes along with our culture. Do you think social behaviors will change, post-pandemic?
I think, and unfortunately the way it is, I think it's going to be the same people that are anti-mask and mask people will see it differently. I was never a germaphobe. And I think I was talking to my parents about this the other day. I was never like a big germaphobe. I would always make sure I wash my hands, sanitizer every once in a while. But as far as I find myself more conscious when I do have to make a store run and like the elevator or, you see like all of a sudden there's that anxiety where you're just like, I don't want to touch that, and I don't want to touch the handrails. And, and for me, I would have friends, when we're in New York City being like, don't touch the handrails, they're gross. And I'd be like, whatever, you touch them and you're like, you're fine. You need some sort of bacteria in your body and, to make your immune system stronger. But I feel like the social norms of handshaking and just greeting people is going to be interesting because at the beginning of this, I would forget and you would just go right in with your hand and then you're like, whoa. And then you do the fist bump or the elbow bump. So I think a lot of people are going to be more aware and carry around, obviously like hand sanitizer, wash their hands more, or I know my circle will be because I think we've been very cautious with this. So I'm gonna be very cautious of it, and I just think it'll be interesting to see. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out because I don't know. I was just telling my dad that I don't know how long it would be before we go back to normal because I think that becomes a pattern and it becomes habitual where
Do you
like
think?
handshake.
Yeah. Do you
Go ahead.
think there is a return to normal as previously understood, or do you think it's different?
I think it's different. And I think the new normal will become just the normal, where it's like because you have kids that know masks now that are just, and in the time before they don't really remember because a year has gone by. So the younger kids, will know. I mean, obviously the newborns that were born last year don't know anything yet, but this is their normal, like this is what their normal is now. And it'll definitely be interesting to see, but I don't see it going back 100%
Mm.
to how it was before. I feel like subconsciously that'll be in everyone's mind because it can happen again. It can happen worse. It can, so I think even business models will have to plan for having that into a clause of some sort of escape clause in case, what if, I think restaurants have to rethink, a lot and everyone because they've been hit hard. A lot of different uh different businesses and different types would have to be like, what if a pandemic hits? Like, can I support, can I support myself? Or insurance companies might have to have a, pandemic clause into their, something. I think it goes down the rabbit hole of just like a domino effect of what change has to be in case a pandemic hits.
Yeah, it makes me think about that. You used to go to a bar and there might be peanuts in a bowl,
Yeah.
just sitting there. I can't imagine ever eating one of those peanuts again. I don't, regardless.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
we were headed down that path anyway. But
Yeah.
where I wonder is, do people consciously not collaborate in person going forward? The one side of this argument is there's so much pent up demand to go on vacation. There's so much pent up demand to go out to a concert.
Yeah.
Imagine a mosh pit,
Yeah.
or something. It's unthinkable to me right now. But then again, we're desperate to get back to watch football games and baseball games, and but it
Yeah.
makes me wonder if you go to a party, right? Everybody's everybody has a bubble around them psychologically, right?
Yep.
You have your personal space bubble, and that typically is about arm's length. And
Hmm.
for most people, does that get bigger? Does, how much of the population really
Yeah.
retracts and doesn't want to, share food? And I had an
Yeah.
ex-girlfriend whose dad was a wonderful, outgoing, social person, and he'd make something, and you'd be standing there, and he would just say, "Hey, this is delicious," and he would jam it in my face, and you're like,
Yeah.
And I never
Yeah.
liked that. That didn't, way before the pandemic, I didn't like that. So, I
Yeah.
can't imagine any of that now. I just wonder how people, and we need to relate to each other, and we do need to understand. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where we needed to understand each other better more.
Right. Yeah. No, that, I mean, yeah. And I think again, it goes back to, where you kind of come to that moment with someone even now, and you're like, I don't know how have you been living, like kind of like there's that
Yeah.
awkward moment where it's like, you taking hugs. I don't know if, are we hugging now? I haven't been hugging, it's almost like you have to carry a card or something where it's like, I don't want to, and the funny thing is that we got married. I got married during the pandemic,
Well,
back in September. I
congratulations.
got married. Thank you. And it was the most anxiety inducing thing because we were like, we're like, what do we do? Like, are we still having it? Are we not having it? Now we included, a Zoom link, and it was like the weirdest thing, for people, because we had, family, both of us had family in California that decided they kind of come, obviously for obvious reasons, and then we kept it small. Now the uh, cocktail hour, everything was individually wrapped, and it was just like, let's just do it, because I mean, let's just keep the people to like under 70 and keep them spaced and have the table spaced. So even then, we're like, wear a mask, be conscious of other people, keep your distance. If you don't feel comfortable, just stay for the ceremony and leave. And I feel it's gonna go that route. Even seeing those pictures of people attempting to have concerts where it's like they're in their own boxes. Like for New Year's Eve, which was the saddest thing to watch, was like people were in the individual boxes, and like I cringe, but at the same time I'm thankful, because it's like you kind of don't want that to become the new norm, because it's so sad. You miss the interaction, you miss the hugging, you miss the crowd going nuts. And then it's funny because you watch older movies and you see that and you're like, remember that time? Remember those times when we used to party and go to concerts, and I feel like everyone has a different breaking point, where it's like some people are like have been done with it, and I see it in my friends, and they're like, are you gonna come to, we're gonna do like a little art gallery like party, socially distanced and everything, and I'm just like, I don't think so. And then you judge it by that person's behavior or by their post. And like if they've been posting, I don't like wearing masks, give up the mask, and and see them picture, eating at restaurants multiple times and no mask around, then you're just like, I seen what you've been posting. Like, I don't feel safe.
Well, I
So
think
it's
I
like,
know it was really funny where you talked about somebody wearing a sign, "Hugs are okay," post
yeah,
pandemic, because
yeah,
I think it
yeah,
will be that moment where shaking hands. I used to shake somebody's hand, and you'd always get that one person with the sweaty palm, and it would be like,
yeah,
ooh, and you know.
yeah,
And now I'm thinking you're going to put your hand out. Someone's going to put their hand out, and the other person's going to say, "Here's the
yeah,
elbow," and you're going to have to
yeah,
be okay with that. Like, we're going to have to accept the fact that you're going to
yeah,
go in to hug somebody, and they're going to be like, no, 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 it's going to
yeah,
be weird, I think, for certain. So on the sort of the last question, what market is impacted the most? I guess the question there really is kind of an economic one, kind of a business one. You talked about being interested in a brick and mortar. I actually know quite a few people who did build out studios right before this. And,
mm,
I followed it like you. I think I first read about it at the end of December or first part of January. I also did buy masks. I did take some steps to make sure. I've got two little kids, so I wanted
yeah,
to make sure we were good. But how do you reinvest, and do you invest differently, or do you open a business, or what do you think? Retail is pretty shot outside of Amazon
yeah,
and sort of online
yeah,
ordering. So, what is your take on all of that?
Yeah, I think it's tough to call because I have friends that there's this kid from the Bronx that owns a retail store, and obviously it all went to shit. It was like, you know, it went from 100%, 100 to zero, and what he did was he reinvented himself where he became more of a online hub, and I thought obviously not everyone can pull it off, but he had a good following in the Bronx. And then, people share it, and then people are like, support local businesses. And I myself have been trying to do that more this season, where I'm like, local, and when I say local, like, again, sometimes it's global because it's through my online community. So it could be someone from California, it could be where I'm like, I'm gonna buy a hoodie from them because I want to support their business,
Mm.
and I think it becomes more not GoFundMe, but I think we have to develop the community where I know previous, they're competitors, where I think now it's more coming together to kind of fight to live, where it's like, hey, like, if you like this, go check out this artist and stuff because he has this going on, and it's like sharing communities where I think it's more like crowdsourcing and crowdfunding where, businesses themselves have to come together to kind of uplift each other. Even like I like what Barstool is doing, like guy Dave, where he developed a fund. And I try to do the same thing where I have a community fund where, proceeds like of the t-shirts and hoodies that are being bought for me, like I'm trying to give back to the community and in whatever way I can, where a school needed some podcast equipment because they wanted to start a podcast, where I donated money for them to start a podcast. And I think it's just a matter of coming together but separately, kind of, where it's like, let's protect the little guys, let's protect the little people, and it's hard not to buy from Amazon sometimes because I have shipment, for my dog food and stuff like that, where it has to come in because it's like, I have a pantry there that just delivers food. But again, not everyone has access to that, not everyone has, so it's those people sometimes you have to think about. And if they're not reaching out to me, it's hard for me to help them. But I think it's just as a community just coming together. And at the early stages, just it was beautiful to see the people coming together in my community as well as other communities of helping each other out. Where donating food or donating help or mental healthness. Where I've seen like this I've seen a couple, but what comes to mind is this new way of getting mental health services, online, or there's an app where you talk to somebody live. And I thought that was clever, where,
Yeah.
especially at this time where, you can have a mental therapist or like, have someone there for you and you book a session and it's on your phone, where that's amazing to me because I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming where now everything's becoming subscription services or, conscious about the pandemic or conscious about germs or just so I just think um it's good and bad. It's got
Yeah.
a good and bad thing.
So with tech, so actually that's interesting from a technology standpoint. You really kind of focused on people changing the way they address technology. So you were saying, hey, I see people using Zoom, using video communications that never did it before, or using their apps like you're talking about now in a
Yeah,
different way. And it really wasn't so much that the technology changed; it was that the people adapted to the technology.
adapted. Yeah,
And then in the
correct.
market, it's sort of the same answer, right? You're saying,
Yeah,
I have to reach out to the community, but in this case, the community could be followers. And it could be,
yep,
some people are in California, some people are in a different country, but the followers become a group. And
yep,
and I think you're right. I think that makes a ton of sense that we were already in a gig economy, but I think we're 10 times past that at this point. And that's really
yeah,
becomes, we've really moved more toward it, which to me really begs the question, why doesn't Jeff Bezos give everybody better broadband access in areas and neighborhoods that don't have it, in
yeah,
poorer class areas? Because they're in a way that's good as a good investment because they're going to use those tools anyway. I remember seeing the two girls in the Taco Bell parking lot trying to steal Wi-Fi for school so they could go to their class, and it's heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
we should be able to fix that,
Yep.
and we should be able to deal with it. But it's an interesting take on what community is. So, what
Yeah.
relationship do you think there a relationship between a physical neighborhood and the way you relate to that community? Because it seems like you're still connected to those, and a virtual community, a digital community that can transcend distance.
Yeah. I think for me, it's one and the same. Like I try to treat it the same, where it's like when I'm talking about a physical local community and I post something, I say, my hometown of Norwalk or something. And when I try to separate the both by being descriptive on it. When I say global, when I'm talking to everyone on my followers list or whoever follows me, that's my online presence, my digital community. But I think the message itself is the same within both. It's always been the same, and it's wherever you are, and to bring it back to like my love more than ever movement, like wherever you are, I mean, whatever language you speak there is love. Everyone loves something, and it's funny because I've gotten into talks with hard right conservatives and left conservatives, and at the end of the conversation there's always mutual respect,
Hmm.
where it's like you at the end of the day we all love something, someone in the community, or everyone has a family, or if you don't have a family you have friends, or you have an animal or pets or something that you love, and I break it down to the lowest common denominator, which is we're all human. We're all human, and we're all going through this together without sounding cliche, but we're all adapting to different things, where uh like the older generation that maybe wasn't so tech savvy, I've seen, numbers of older people, like even within my family, that have gotten tech savvy and know how to Zoom, or how to reach out. And you're getting text messages from older relatives that you didn't know they can text. And it's like funny because that's their way of staying connected, and even in the Zoom when I got married, you had older generation folks from down south, from California, that chimed into the wedding and they wanted to see it, and it's unprecedented, and like it's been that way since last March, where when everything started shutting down, and it's like you almost hit a hard reset, and it's like, well, we got to get over this, we as people in general, there might be some laggers and some people that are not on board with it because they thought it was going to be over in a few weeks, or a few months. But then as the time goes on, I feel like it's our responsibility to reach back and be like, all right, come on, let's teach them how to do this on technology or on computers, and let's teach the older generation. And I feel because of that we're moving forward, and that's becoming a separate community within another community, where it's just like we're all helping each other out and coming together. And I think I mean I think I've seen it both ways, where I mean, because this past summer there's been, obviously with the Black Lives Matter protests and everything, and I held a couple rallies, like you really get to see people's point of views, and like, because a lot of it says a lot with when people can post something behind the keyboard, and it's like you're like, wow, I didn't know you thought that way, but I mean, you're still my friend, and at the end of the day we'll have a long in-depth conversation, yell, whatever, but like you come to a realization that after all the words said and after everything, we've known each other 10 years and we're good friends, and like, doesn't matter, we're human. Like, let's
Mm.
just get through this. Like, let's just get through whatever it is. And I feel like a strong sense of community comes from that, and it's just like it's it's phenomenal, you know. And then there's been the weird part of the communities too, you know.
Well, you know,
Conspiracy theory.
do you feel like your Love More Than Ever piece couldn't have been, I feel like you were ahead of the game actually. And now this pandemic rolls in, and that mantra is even more important, more present and more needed.
Yeah.
Do you have another one that you're ready to launch to help us help people adapt or help people listen to each other more? I mean, I think in a lot of respects, I've seen a lot of what you're talking about, but I've also seen the other examples where people aren't listening to each other and they're going
Yeah.
either further apart, which I think is problematic.
Yeah. And then yes, and that's what I was talking about. Like, there's a other sense of, because even through that, like when I got involved in you know, having the protests and rallies, and like, you know, I saw two worlds, right? Where I would post something that was, you know, after George Floyd, like, you know, I never posted anything anti-police because I'm not anti-police, because I have family members that are police officers. But it's a matter of always taking a step back and just looking as a community, as humans, and being like, you know, let's see it not through a political lens. Let's see it from a human lens and be like, you know, was that right? You know, put politics aside, put George Floyd's past aside, and be like, as a human being, was that right? Like, did he have to die? Did he have to be murdered? And that goes with everyone. And you know, and I got into things where people were like, well, that comment's not so much love more than ever. You know, and I've gotten called out a couple of times because I've made comments like that. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying this black person is more important than you, or this white person is more than you. I said, if an Italian person or a Greek person or an Irish person was murdered that way, and I've stood up for people that way too, because there are murders like that also, where if it was a Greek Lives Matter rally, I'd be right there, you know, fighting for them, you know, because there's different ethnicities and different things. White Lives Matter it's a different thing altogether, because just there's different, you know, Greeks, Irish, Scottish, like I will fight for anybody, you know, that's been unjust. So so it's definitely gotten heightened in the last couple of months, and I feel like there are tensions boiling, and where even after the Capitol thing last week, like, you know, a lot of people like come to me on social media and then they ask me what I think, or, you know, they tell me, you know, we need love more than ever now. Like, what are you going to do now? And it's like, right. But sometimes I also preach where it's like, you know, when I'm talking to people, kids, you know, I say it's okay to feel sad and it's okay to feel mad. You know, everyone has emotions. You're not a robot. And it's not like, just because I say love more than ever, I try to stress that I get in bad moods. You know, it's like, it doesn't mean the love's not there. You know, it's just, I get in bad moods. Like, let me handle myself. So it's a case by case basis.
I think the power of it, though, if you don't mind me jumping in, is I found your Love More Than Ever on the street in Chicago one time, and followed you on Instagram right away. And I think about it all the time. And the issue is when I disagree with somebody or I find myself very opposed to them, I think what I like about it is it brings us all back to a commonality, which is what you said. And from that common position, now move forward and try to understand a different perspective. And we may not agree as to what, you know, needs to be done next, or certain issues or whatever. But if we did come from a commonality, we would be in a much better place as a culture, as a society, as the republic here in the U.S., whatever. And I think that's a profound message that we don't hear enough of. And I know you're trying, but you know, I'd like to see
and it's also
the news media throw it out there too.
Yeah, and it's also a matter of seeing it from perspectives. You know, like I was raised, you know, I'm more independent. Like I like to see both sides. I like to hear the full story. Like I don't react just by emotions. Like I want to hear facts. You know, I want to, and I've gotten into arguments for both sides because I'm like, well, what are the facts? Like, you know, did they actually say that, or is that what the media is telling you? Like you have to research, and it's all about reacting to the news yourself, and then keeping calm, and then taking it all in, and then doing your research and kind of like it's all about getting back to centered, you know, like after, right when that was happening, my first thought was last week was, where the effing cops? Like, you know, like I've been to the Capitol numerous times where I thought I was going to get shot for stepping too close to the statue, you know, where it's like, so, you know, that's my first thought. And then I'm like, well, what's going on? And then getting angry. And then it's like, you work through that. And then by day 3 afterwards, I was like, I have to reset. And like, I have to keep moving forward with love more than ever, because that's what it comes down to. And that's who it's all about. It's as humans, we just have to remain calm. You know, it just has to be calm and get to the point. But there is always room for overreaction, you know, or initial reactions and being like, what, you know, and then you have to always, I try to train myself to get back to center and look at it from a different point of view and try to see all points of view, you know. So when people try to call that out, I love it, because I'm like, listen, if you go on my website, it tells you right there that we're going to fight against injustices against everyone. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's an injustice, if it's a true injustice, we're going to fight for it, you know? So I think the message is always there. I have another one. It's just more through talks with kids, with children. So it's more about giving yourself love. So it's give yourself love. And it goes back to, you know, having a lot of conversations through Zoom, and kids of all ages asking me questions about, you know, what if you can't love yourself, and you know, they love other people more, or so it was more of a sense of coming back to that, you know, giving yourself love, because without that, there is no love more than ever. You know, you have to love yourself. You have to be in a place. So
I always wonder. I think it's a great message. I always wonder if people really understand what it means to love yourself. I think that's a tough concept.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
And give yourself a little space, give yourself a break, and just try to do better. And I think that's a tough one. I can't thank you enough for this chat. It's been fantastic. And awesome. I was super excited about it. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Robert Benson interview series in commARCH Dialogues. To stay up to date with commARCH content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. For more content like this, including a full transcript of this interview, other interviews in the series, digital issues, and more, please visit the commARCH website at www.commARCH.com. Thanks for watching.